Hey guys, it's Mark Vo with VOGTLAND Outdoors, and this is video number 2 of a 2-part series on a review of the VOGTLAND shooting method. Roll 'em! Today we're talking about the VOGTLAND string walking method. Let's set the stage. Behind me you see 3 targets, 20 meters, 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards, and I can't quite tell, but I think it's 60 yards out there. Let's concentrate on these front 3. These are the ones that matter today. We already saw that in the last video on the VOGTLAND shooting method, there were 5 steps. Step number 1 was you had to choose a gap between the nocking point of the arrow itself and the drawing point of your index finger, that when that index finger is anchored under your chin at full draw, that determines the elevation of the arrow, which determines the range the arrow flies. And I said that for a 20-meter shot, that first one, 20 yards, 20 meters, there's only 1 yard of difference between the two, that you needed a gap of 3 fingers. I said that step 2 was that you're going to draw back and anchor under your chin. Step 3, you're going to look down the left edge of the bowstring. That's your rear sight. Step 4, you're going to put the tip of the arrow on the bullseye. That's your front sight. Step 5, you're going to make a small motion release. And that's going to get you out to 20 meters. But what do you do for 30? We need an additional change. What do we need? We need a change in elevation. What kind of elevation? We need that back to come down. It has to come down like this, so the front goes up, so it goes farther. The question is, how much should it come down? From that initial 3-finger gap for 20 meters, that 20-meter initial gap, how far does it come down? And what I'm going to teach you guys today with the VOGTLAND string walking method is that there's going to be 2 numbers that you learn about your bow, your arrow, and your draw length. And that's going to be the 20-meter initial gap that you always start with. And the second number is going to be your 10-meter interval gap. How much should that gap change in order to get a change in distance of plus or minus 10 meters? And with those 2 numbers, you can actually calculate any gap you need for a 5-meter shot all the way up to a 120-meter shot with just those 2 numbers. I know from experience that with a 40 to 45 pound bow, the 10-meter interval gap is about 1/2 of a finger. So that all of my distances, when I'm determining what a gap is, I'm using my fingers as the measuring stick. Why would I do that? First and foremost, it allows me to use gloves. I don't have to use a finger tab with little stitches on there, because now you can never wear a glove. And on top of it, if you go into an archery shop somewhere, or you go to an archery competition, or you're out in the park and somebody's shooting a bow and they say, hey, do you want to shoot it? You say what? I can't shoot it today. I don't have my tab with me, with my little measuring units on it. You've got your fingers. They fit in your pocket. You can carry them around anywhere. You can shoot any bow by measuring with your fingers. So by memorizing these 2 numbers, 3-finger gap for 20 meters and a 1/2 finger gap for every 10 meters, then when I want to actually change this angle, then for a 30-meter shot, I have to pull it down a 1/2 of a finger. 40-meter shot, another 1/2. 50-meter shot, another 1/2. 60-meter shot, another 1/2. 70-meter shot, another 1/2. 80-meter shot, another 1/2, and so forth. And also, if I start with a 20-meter gap and I want to shoot 10, I have to increase that gap by 1/2 of a finger. If I want to shoot 5, another 1/2 of a finger, roughly. So you can literally shoot from 5 meters all the way out to 40, 50, even 100 meters. It's just a question of starting with the 20-meter gap and then adjusting for every 10 meters of range change that you need. You shorten this gap, pulling the back of the arrow down by a half of a finger. So let's see if this works. I'm going to aim for the center of that 30-yard bag. Step one, I'm going to set my gap. Now it's going to come in two parts. I'm going to set the 20-meter gap, and then I'm going to adjust it by a half of a finger for 30. Then the rest of the shooting method stays the same. Step one, I've set my gap. It's now 2.5 fingers instead of 3. Step two, draw back and anchor under your chin. Step three, look down the left edge of the bowstring. That's your rear sight. 4, tip of the arrow on the front of the target. That's your front sight. 5, small motion release. I shot just a little bit high. I probably shifted while I was talking. But we're on to something here. So what about that 40-meter target? What does that look like? It starts off with, let me get behind you guys. For that 40-meter target over here, it's going to be a 3-finger gap to start, and then I'm going to shorten it by a half of a finger to get to 30, and by another half of a finger to get to 40. So that becomes my gap for a 40-yard shot. And it's going to look something like that when I aim. Seems too simple, doesn't it? But really, over a certain range of about 10 meters out to about 70 or 80, it's actually a very linear proportion. Be adjustment in the elevation of the arrow. And when you get beyond 80, you adjust a little bit more because the arrow's not in a perfect parabolic arc. But you get the idea. You have a really wide range of motion from just those two numbers. So let's see what we can do at 40 yards. Step one, I'm going to choose my gap. Step one, I'm going to choose my gap. 2 parts. I start with a 20-meter gap, 3 fingers, and now I'm going to go shorten it by a half of a finger to get to 30, and another half of a finger to get to 40. That's my 40-yard gap. Step two, draw back and anchor under your chin. Step three, look down the left edge of the bowstring. That's your rear sight. Step 4, put the tip of the arrow on the center of the target. That's your front sight. Step 5. Small motion release. What? It can't be that easy. Yes, it is. I'm having a little bit of trouble here today because all of these targets are in yards, and my 2 string walking numbers were measured originally to shoot meters on the field target over there. So I might actually shift over and go and redo this video at the meters. But you get the idea how simple this method is. That if it was out to 50, you would adjust up a half a finger, up a half a finger, up another half a finger to get from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50. You're just reducing that gap by this fixed amount that's based on your fingers for your dimensions, so you can carry it in your pocket any way you want to go. Give this a try, you guys. Go out and see how far you can shoot. See if you can shoot at 10 meters. See if you can shoot at 20. At 10 meters, you're adding a half of a finger on to your gap. You're making it wider. At 20, you're back to your 20-meter gap. At 30, you're making it a half a finger narrower. 40, half a finger narrower. 50, half a finger narrower. 60, half a finger narrower. 70, half a finger narrower. 80, 90, it keeps going until you can literally walk right over the top of the arrow as well. And we're going to go shoot over on that side just to show you what's possible. Okay, here I am back at the field archery, not the hunting archery range. Everything's measured in meters, and that's what I have measured my gaps in. My 20-meter initial gap, my 10-meter interval gap. So let's shoot at the 20 and the 30 here. That bag, center of mass, is going to be my 20-meter target. That's a 3-finger gap. Looking over my shoulder. Step 1, choose your gap, 3 fingers. Step 2, draw back and anchor under your chin firmly. Step 3, look down the left edge of the bowstring. That's your rear sight. Step 4, put the tip of the arrow on the center of the bullseye. That's your front sight. Step 5, small motion release. That looks pretty good. Let's try 30 meters. 30 meters. Step 1, choose your gap. 20 meters, 3 fingers, minus a half of a finger. puts me at 2.5 fingers for a 30-meter shot. Step 2, draw back and anchor under your chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the bowstring. Step 4, put the tip of the arrow on the center of the target. Step 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Small motion release. What else can I shoot at that's already here? I think, let's see if that bag is over there. Do you guys see that bag over there? That looks like it's at 40. Let's turn a little bit. 40 meters, what does that look like? It looks like step 1, choose your gap. 3 fingers to start, 20 meter. Then go reduce by a half a finger, reduce by a half a finger to get a 2-finger gap for 40 meters. Step 1, choose your gap. Step 2, draw back and anchor under your chin. 3, look down the left edge of the bowstring. 4, tip of the arrow on the center of the bag. 5, center of mass. See how easy the VOGTLAND string walking is? It can give you very precise control over distances from 5 meters all the way out to 50, all the way out to 120. Let's go pull those arrows and shoot at some of the farther targets. Okay, we've shot at 20 yards, 20 meters, we shot at 30 meters, we shot at 40 meters. That big black square behind me with the orange dot in the middle is a 50-meter shot. Let's go see what we can do. It's going to end up using both numbers of this VOGTLAND string walking method. We start with a 20-meter initial gap. We start with a 20-meter initial gap. There's our target. 20-meter initial gap. And then I'm going to go up a half a finger for 30, up a half a finger for 40, up a half a finger for 50. This, when I anchor under my chin, will pull the back of the arrow down so it flies farther and lands in the center of the target. And when I'm aiming, looking down the left edge of the bowstring, it's going to look a little bit like that. It's always really hard to show that on the camera. All right, so here goes. Step 1, choose your gap. It's going to be 3 fingers, minus a half, minus a half, minus a half. Step 2, draw back and anchor under your chin. Step 3, look down the left edge of the bowstring. 4, tip of the arrow on the center of the target. Step 5, center of mass. It's just a practical method, guys. It actually makes sense when you shoot. That's all I got time for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this little lesson on string walking. Feel free to subscribe to my channel and we'll see you out there. Thanks.